young child, that my mom would tell me to go and clean my room. Now, she would tell me, go to your room and don't come out till it's clean. You can't go outside. You can't do anything. Go to your room and get it clean. And I said, yes, ma'am. And I would go to my room and I would shut my door. And I would commence to playing with my stuff, my toys and whatever I had in the room. And because I really didn't see a need in cleaning my room. Because, I mean, the way I had this figured out is that if you clean it, you're just going to dirty it again anyway. So we could just skip a step in this process and not clean it. And why would you make a bed that you're going to get back into in a few hours? It's just hours away. You're going to be climbing back in that bed. Right? Do you understand where I'm coming from? Am I the only one who thinks like this? Yeah, I guess I am. But I would play with my stuff, at least as a child. Anyway, I would play with my stuff. My thinking's changed a little bit as I got older, but not much. But some. But as a child, I would play with my stuff until it came time that I wanted something, right? I wanted to go out. And then I found that there actually was a reason to make your bed. Because if you make your bed just right, and you pull that cover just right to the front, then you can take all your stuff and you can throw it underneath there. You don't really have to clean your room, but it will hide and make the room look clean, you know? Some of you have done that, I can tell by the looks on your faces. So there is a reason to make the bed, but that's the only reason I really actually see making the bed. But in doing so, I was being deceitful, wasn't I? Yeah? And I was being disobedient, wasn't I? Yeah. Yeah, I was. My mom had asked me to clean my room. Yes, ma'am, I'm going. But instead I went and played. I did what I wanted to do, right? Not what she asked me to do. I did what I wanted to do. And then I hid it by throwing stuff under the bed and pulling the sheet forward. And, you know, I can say this, I can tell you the story because my mom doesn't watch my videos. So if she's not here, I know that the story's not going to get back to her. So it's okay. She'll never know the difference. She'll think to this day that I cleaned my room. But was that what I was supposed to do? No. How many of you have ever done anything like that? Maybe something similar to that. Yeah, you got a couple honest people in the audience. 3, 4, 5. I got some honest people. Some people say, no, I've never done that. Or maybe you know, done that not as a child, but maybe as an adult. Maybe your wife said, can you take care of fixing this? And you say, oh, sure, baby, I got this. And 5, 6 months later, it still needs to be fixed, right? I won't ask for volunteers on that one. You know, if that's you, that's you. But maybe you've encountered that, or your friend asked you to do something and you said you'd do it and you didn't do it, or you'd show up and you didn't show up. Maybe, you know, you had good intentions, but, you know, they always taught me intentions don't fill the bucket. You actually have to dip the bucket in the well, right? You know, it doesn't mean that you have bad intentions. It just means that you didn't follow through with what you were supposed to do, right? So some of you can relate to that at least a little bit, right? Or maybe at some point, you know, your wife said, can you do the laundry today? And you thought, no, I cut the grass. You do the laundry. You know, that's your job. I do my job. You do your job. And you get all bent out of shape, and then the more you think about it, you know, it's not going to hurt me to do the laundry. You go do the laundry, right? So it's kind of like, if you can relate to any of that, then you can probably relate to the story of the 2 sons, the parable of the 2 sons. We're continuing on our journey through the parables this week, and today we're talking about the parable of the 2 sons. 2 different contrasting things that dip and hit into human nature a lot, don't you? You can see those things happen. Maybe you didn't do them, but you can understand where he's coming from. It's a very understandable parable, right? Maybe you've always done what you're supposed to do, and that's great, and I applaud you. But for most of us, I think, at least at some point, we've been one of those 2, right? So we can relate to it. It's a human nature. But before we get into too much of the human nature part of it, I think we need to understand where this parable is coming from. What's the setting on this? Now, if we look at the beginning of chapter 21 in Matthew, you're going to find Jesus making his triumphal entry into Jerusalem. And everybody's cheering him, right? They want to make him king. They're singing his praises. It's the start of a good week, right? Or a good day. He's riding on a donkey. Everybody loves him. And then he goes later on in Matthew in chapter 21, and he cleanses the temple. right? Throws out the money changers, right, for ripping off the people who would come to buy sacrifices, for making his father's house a den of thieves, so to speak. So he clears that. And then as we go farther into 21, right before we get to this parable, oh, wait a minute, I got a little bit ahead of myself. Then Jesus does something odd. It says he cursed a fig tree. Kind of strange, isn't it? To throw that in there. Jesus cursed a fig tree because it didn't have any fruit. You remember that story? Right? He's walking along and he goes to get some fruit. There's no fruit on the fig tree. There's plenty of leaves but no fruit. Jesus cursed it, says, you'll never produce any more fruit. The tree withers away. I'm only telling you that because a lot of you look at me like, fig tree, I don't want any fig tree. So it withers away and dies. That's kind of a strange story to have in there, isn't it? Right? But the reality is that Israel is often compared to a fig tree. And the fact that it had many leaves but no fruit could symbolically be saying, you're all bells and whistles. You say you're glorifying God. You say you're honoring God. But you're not producing any fruit. There's no repentance. There's no obedience. You say you're doing it, but you're not doing it. You're not doing what you're supposed to be doing. Sound like one of the sons in the story, right? Which comes right after that. Because what happens is the religious leaders then say, who is this guy who comes in, riding on a donkey, everybody wants singing his praises, wants to name him king. He goes and upsets the tables in the temple. Who is this guy? By what authority is he doing all this stuff? So the religious leaders are questioning Jesus' authority, and this parable is his answer to them. It's the first of three parables he tells. The first is the two sons. The second is the tenants, the parable of the tenants, and the third one is the wedding feast. But we're just going to deal with the two sons today. But these are his answers to the Jewish people about their authority. Now, who do you think Israel is? The first son or the second son? Who do you think he's referring to as the religious leaders as being? Those who say they won't do it, they won't worship God, but go and do it, or those who say, oh yeah, we got this, but don't have this, do they? Maybe they have become so caught up in their bells and whistles, their rules and their rituals, that they forgot about people. Right? Maybe they forgot about humanity. The most important thing we have to offer is our love, right? It's not our rules and our rituals. It's not about how we dress or what we go through or what things that we do. Every church is different. We have different rituals that they have in different churches. But what's really important is not the rituals. What's important is the people sitting in the pews, and not just people in the pews, the people outside the church. What's important is people. And Christ is saying, you've forgotten all the people. Because everything that you do as a church should be about one thing. It's about bringing people into a relationship with Christ. Everything that you do. Now, there's a lot of churches that have a lot of bells and whistles. They have a lot of programs. If you go to a big church and you see, and I'm not criticizing them, but they have all these programs. And my question is, how many of those programs bring people into a relationship with Christ? Or are they for the entertainment of the congregation? I'm just asking the question. I'm not judging. Okay? Because everything as a church that we do should be about bringing people to know Christ. That's what we're called to do, right? That's what the religious leaders were called to do that day. Just like I show up here and preach every Sunday, they're supposed to preach a word. Right? They're supposed to bring people into a closer relationship. I hope that I work somehow towards that for you. I pray that every Sunday. That somehow the words that come out of my mouth will help you to move into a closer relationship with God and to know what you're supposed to do. And that was their job. But were they doing it? Was Israel doing it? Were they just going through the motions? You know, you hear a lot of people who talk the talk, but they don't walk the walk, do they? No, they don't. And we're called to do just that. Not just talk it, but to walk it, right? We're called to live it out in our daily lives. From the time we get up to the time we go to bed. We're called to be available, right? Oftentimes it's not about your ability, but your availability. You say, well, I can't sing. I can't do this. Trust me, just like Pam was talking about that mustard seed, God can do great things with a little bit. I'm a living example of that. God can do great things with a little bit. But you have to make that little bit available. When He calls you, are you listening? When He asks you to do things, are you hearing it? You know, we need to make it our business to walk so closely to God. Through our study of His Word, through Sunday school, through church. We're walking so closely to God. He don't have to yell, and He don't have to do it with a boom of voice, that if He whispers, you can hear what He's saying to you. We need to open up our ears. We don't need to be like the child who sits in front of the TV and the parent says, hey, let's go, it's time for homework. Hey, it's time for homework. Hey, it's time. And we just stare at the TV like they're oblivious to everything. Sometimes I think God speaks to us and we're like that child sitting in front of that TV. We're so focused on what we're doing that we're not hearing what God's talking to us about. We need to make ourselves available to Him, to hear a word from Him, to do His work. That's part of the steps. You know, there was we can't just be hearers of the word. We need to be what? Doers of the word. That's right. There's a story of back in the Revolutionary War. This man came up to George Washington and said, General Washington, I just want to let you know I believe in everything you're doing. I believe in your cause and what you're doing and what you're fighting for. And I just want to let you know I'm proud to know you. He was very gracious. He said, well, thank you. Thank you very much. I'm glad that you believe in our cause. Who do you fight with? And the man just gave him a blank stare. He said, you know, what regiment are you with? Who do you fight for this cause with? And the man said, I don't fight. I'm a civilian. And George Washington said, if you believe in my cause, then get a uniform, pick up a rifle, and fight. It's not enough to sit there and be a cheerleader. You got to suit up and get on the field. You need to get into the game. To stand on the sidelines and say, go preacher, it's your birthday. No, next week. But not this week. But to cheer for the preacher to go, no, that's not what you're called to do. You are in the priesthood of believers. You are called to be doers of the word. To live it out daily. We need to make ourselves available for that. But being available is not just enough. We have to be sensitive to the needs of other people. We have to walk as Christ would walk. We're called to follow in His footsteps, closely in His footsteps as we can. Sometimes we strive and we can't reach it, but we need to strive for it. To be sensitive that there are people out there who are in need. We don't step over the homeless. We give them a hand up. We can't turn our backs on other people because you know what? Christ came for us. All of us. Not just the people who attend church on Sunday. And what did He say? Whatever you do to the least of these, you do to me. Would you leave Jesus there? Would you step over Him? Think about that. Think about that. You know, there's a story comes out of Germany in World War II, and they went to this village and they gathered up the Jewish families, and they had them dig a ditch, a very shallow ditch, and they lined them up and they shot them all. Or they shot machine guns at them, and they all fell in the ditch. And there was a 10-year-old boy who miraculously none of the bullets hit him. But he fell backwards with his family and he laid there as though he had been shot. And they covered him with a thin layer of dirt, not enough to smother him, and he waited till nightfall, when everyone had gone away. And he got up and he was covered with blood from those around him, and he went and he knocked on the doors asking for help. And the people recognized who he was and that he was a Jewish boy, and they're like, get away from me. Get away from me. Get away from this house. We don't need any trouble. And they slammed the door. And house after house he went to. Nobody would help him. Nobody would give him a hand. Till finally he was about to give up. And he went to this door and he knocked on the door. And before the lady who answered could say anything, he goes, don't you recognize me? And she looked at him and he's like, I'm the Jesus that you say you believe in. And she stopped dead in her tracks. And she opened up her arms and picked him up and carried him inside. You see, when we see those people hurting, when we see those people who are down, we need to treat them as though that was Christ. How would you treat them if that was Christ? Would you help them? Would you turn your back on them? Would you walk away from them? Can you justify walking away from them? You see, we're all in this together, folks. And this crazy planet that spins around, that has random killings and stupid stuff going on in the world. We're all in this together, even though we might not be doing the stupid stuff. You know, I've done stupid things in my life, maybe not to the degree of some of the things that I see happening in this world today, but man, we're all in this together. But it's going to take all of us to fix it. All of us to make ourselves available, to put on the uniform and to go to battle, to bring people into a relationship with Christ. If we sit in the stands and just cheer, it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. We need to be active. We need to open our hearts up and be sensitive to people and know there are people in need. And how do we meet that need? And how can I care for my brother? And how can I take care of other people? And how can I put others first and myself second? That's what Christ did, isn't it? He put you before himself. He died on the cross for you. And we're called to be ambassadors, aren't we? We're called to be the hands and feet of Christ. We're called to go out to the world and make a difference. Because you saw the last part of that parable that I read. It talks about accountability. And there will come a day that we'll all be held accountable for how we lived out this life. You know, accountability is not something that we see much of in this world anymore, is it? Nobody wants to take responsibility for anything. It's not my fault. It's not my fault. I don't want to be held accountable. You know, I read this week, about a young man who was sentenced to 6 months in prison for raping an unconscious girl. And the father complained that that was too severe. That why should he pay such a price for for a 20-minute mistake? You know, the problem is that we're not teaching our children to be accountable for their actions. We don't want to be accountable for our actions. When I read that, I had one response. I had one word. Seriously? Are you seriously complaining about a 6-month jail sentence? What about that young lady who will live the rest of her life with that? Seriously? We need to be accountable out there. There's a world that's going to be held accountable. We're going to be held accountable too as a church. And we're going to stand before God one day and say, what did you do for me? Did you advance the kingdom? Did you help your brother? Did you share my love with other people? What's the saying I once heard? If there was a trial today to determine whether you were a Christian or not, would there be enough evidence to convict you? If not, why not? Why not? Because we're not living our life the way we should. You know, we're going through the motions. We look good in church on Sunday, but what do we do on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday? God's not a 20-minute or hour a day, hour of Sunday, 2-hour Sunday. God, He's 24/7. He's with you all the time, and He's committed to you every second of every day. Are you committed to Him in the same way? And that's the question. Because you need to put on your uniform and get in the game. There's a lot of folks out there in need of loving Christians. Now, I'm not here to judge you. That's not my job, but I'm here to encourage you. I'm here to encourage you that if you're not where you need to be, that you get where you need to be. I got a uniform that'll fit you. It'll fit you good. It'll make you look good. I'm going to tell you, it will. That you need to go out there and be an ambassador. Let others see Jesus in you. Let that love that fills your heart overflow where people can't stop. They say, what's up with Charles? Goodness gracious. Have you just seen? He's just glowing. I mean, what's going on? Make them beg that question today. Ask, what's going on with you today? Why are you so happy? Why are you doing these things? Why do you help people when you don't have to help people? Why are you giving your time? Why are you giving your efforts? Why? Because I love Christ and that's what He commanded me to do. Right? He commanded all of us to do that. To love God and to love your neighbor. And as I sit here and think about it when I was a kid, if I really had been obedient, loved my mother, and wanted to show her how much I loved her, I would have cleaned that room until it was spick and span just because she asked me to. Right? Not because of any consequences, but because I wanted to show her how much I cared. If that gentleman had really believed in that cause for when George Washington approached him, or they talked, he'd have put on a uniform, picked up a gun, and he'd have fought, right? Because he'd have been committed to it, wouldn't he? If you really love Jesus, once you put your uniform on and be an ambassador to Christ, so we, small church of Ledbetter, can change the world one person at a time. And all God's people said, amen.